Welcome to the Full Bull Podcast, where we discuss all things bio-nanogenomics. We hope everyone's doing well and that the information presented here can both inform and entertain. It's important to state that nothing here is financial advice, and no one on the Full Bull Podcast is a financial advisor. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Full Bull Podcast. It is I, Justin, aka Vegetable Maximum 970, here once again to bring all you Bingolorians, bingo dudes, and bingo dudettes the most exciting content when it comes to genomics, bio-nano, and everything you need to know about it. Today is very special, guys, and I can't wait to bring it to you. Let me introduce you to the bulls. We got Jeff, a.k.a. The Jefford Effect.
Hey, y'all.
We got Michael, a.k.a. The Super Cunt. And Henry with the House of Gains.
What's up?
Henry. Today's very special, guys. It is earnings day for bio-nanogenomics. We're recording a very special episode for you. Going to bring it to you live as it comes out. You're going to get our honest-to-God reactions to it with a quick summary right at the end. You're not going to want to miss. Let's get right to it, guys. Here we go.
Here we go. And welcome to the bio-nanogenomics fourth quarter and year-end 2020 earnings conference call. At this, all participants are in a listen-only mode. A question and answer session will follow the formal presentation. If anyone should require operator assistance during the conference, please press *0 on your telephone keypad. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Amy Conrad, Investor Relations for bio-nano. Amy?
Bring it, Amy.
Come on, Amy.
Thank you, Hillary, and good afternoon, everyone.
Hey. Good afternoon,
Welcome to bio-nanogenomics fourth quarter and year-end 2020 financial results conference call. With me today are Dr. Erik Holmlin, CEO of bio-nano, and Chris Stewart, CFO of bio-nano. After market close today, bio-nano issued a press release announcing its financial results for the fourth quarter and year ended December 31st, 2020. A copy of the release can be found on the Investor Relations page of the company's website. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that certain statements made during this conference call may be forward-looking, including statements about bio-nano's business strategy and commercialization.
There are like two voices going on.
Sales pipeline, anticipated benefits or improvements to the Saphyr system, and the advantages of the Saphyr system over current technologies, our expectations regarding timing and content of study results, and anticipated benefits of these studies in driving adoption of the Saphyr system. Such forward-looking statements are based upon current expectations, and there can be no assurances that the results contemplated in these statements will be realized. Actual results may differ materially from such statements due to a number of factors and risks, some of which are identified in our press release and other reports filed with the SEC. These forward-looking statements are based on information available to bio-nano today, and the company assumes no obligation to update statements as circumstances change. An audio recording and webcast replay for today's conference call will also be available online in the investors section of the company website. With that, I'll turn the call over to Erik. Erik?
Ooh, baby.
Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us
Hail to the King
on our year-end 2020 call. And to open up today, I'd like to review our progress and updates, and then Chris will review the financials. I'll close it out, and then we'll open up the call for Q&A. But let me begin by saying that 2020 was really a tremendous year for bio-nano, and going into the year, our focus was on making it easier than ever for customers to get access to Saphyr data. The objective was to really raise awareness about the unique and extensive insight that Saphyr and optical genome mapping provide into structural variations in the genome. And despite the start that 2020 brought us and the challenges that came along with it, we were able to successfully increase the installed base of Saphyr systems to 97, which was an increase of 24 systems from the prior year. We shipped a record number of flow cells and removed a major roadblock for customers by expanding our services lab, which made Saphyr data available to customers for as little as a few $100s. This concerted effort to seed the market resulted in a number of high-profile customer engagements, numerous studies published in 2020, and fueled the presentations at our Next Generation Cytogenomics Symposium in January. Globally, we saw a substantial increase in the interest in optical genome mapping for the power of genome analysis that it provides. We announced reagent rental agreements focused on cytogenomic validation studies with 3 of the largest children's hospitals in Europe and Spain, Italy, and France. We had agreements with cytogenetics labs in hospitals in Germany, Switzerland, Slovenia, Australia, and Canada. We also saw traction throughout Europe and in Australia and Canada, in part, we believe, due to the fact that their healthcare systems are single-payer systems, and the path to reimbursement for novel technologies in healthcare is typically faster than in other geographies.
A little shade.
In the U.S., we've noted that a path to reimbursement from third-party payers is going to be a necessary step to gaining widespread adoption of optical genome mapping with the Saphyr system. And that's something that we recognize can be a long and challenging process, but we're very focused on addressing it. Now, to complement the expansion of our commercial efforts, the utility of optical genome mapping with Saphyr was validated through benchmarking, scientific publication of data, and of course, clinical adoption. Throughout the year, numerous rigorous and extensive comparisons of Saphyr were conducted against traditional cytogenetic methods, long-read sequencing, and the results of these comparisons were published in several key publications, presented in different presentations at industry meetings that were taking place, and through
he's warming us up right now.
All of these studies showed that Saphyr is
the
superior alternative to traditional cytogenetics methods. Specifically, as you can see on this slide, we had growing excitement as more and more researchers got access to the breadth of data on structural variation and genome structural analysis in general that Saphyr can provide. And through these studies, they demonstrated Saphyr's ability to go beyond the standard understanding of genome structure in a variety of clinically relevant areas. On the clinical side, specifically, we are seeing Saphyr bring value to cytogenomic analysis by reducing the total reagent cost, turnaround time, labor cost, and by simplifying the analysis of genomes in cancer patients and patients who are suspected of having a genetic disease, all compared to today's workflows in cytogenetics. And we believe that Saphyr offers a truly better, faster, and more cost-effective tool that overall will accelerate to actionable results and improve patient outcomes. We believe that this path to widespread adoption of optical genome mapping with Saphyr in the U.S. requires 3 main prerequisites. First, publishing multiple large studies that show concordance with the existing standard of care. There's a requirement for labs that adopt the Saphyr system across the U.S. to develop assays for clinical applications and validate those assays as laboratory-developed tests. And lastly, a clear path for clinics and labs that are operating optical genome mapping assays. They need to be able to bill insurance providers and be reimbursed for their tests before they'll comfortably convert over from the standard of care. Now, one of the most important areas of validation in 2020 was with the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, who switched their method of molecular testing for patients presumed to have FSHD, which is a rare muscular disease with no approved therapy to optical genome mapping with the Saphyr system. In addition, we had a very meaningful publication come out using Saphyr data from UC San Francisco Children's, and in collaboration with Oakland Children's Hospital. Here, researchers and clinicians were able to diagnose additional 18% of children who were otherwise undiagnosed standard of care testing using the Saphyr system.
Wow.
Now, this kind of work and all of the studies that have gone on over the course of 2020 are truly groundbreaking in the scientific advances that they bring in showing how diseases can be diagnosed with new tools, but they really enforce why everybody at BioNano Genomics shows up for work every day. We are truly determined to revolutionize the way diseases are diagnosed, and in particular for children, where a diagnosis of a disease can have a profound effect on their lives, on their families' lives, and on the lives of the caregivers and the healthcare system overall. Our goal is to shorten the diagnostic journey and accelerate the path that these patients are on to managing their disease, and in many cases, the most effective treatment. Now, in 2020, we've also made significant advances in our technology and released the biggest upgrade to our software capabilities, which together have continued to improve the capability of Saphyr. We introduced our newest DNA isolation kits, which allow for faster and much simpler isolation of ultra-long genomic DNA from smaller and smaller amounts of samples, including solid tumors, which has removed one of the most significant hurdles in the study of structural variation in solid tumors. We also saw our users conduct comprehensive structural variation analysis throughout oncology, where they're able now to detect rare variants that may be the drivers of different diseases, including genetic and inherited diseases, as well as being able to see off-target effects that may be occurring during CRISPR-based gene editing. All the while using the Saphyr system and telling us that it's easier to use than other genome analysis systems in their labs. And so this feedback and the progress that we're making makes us believe that our system is ready to serve the needs in what is an increasingly large market for structural variation analysis, both on the clinical side and on the research side. Expansion in the number of laboratory-developed tests, or LDTs, in the market is another driver of wider and wider adoption. We announced last quarter the German accreditation of Saphyr for the detection of various types of structural variations that cause constitutional genetic disorders. And this is a prime example of how Saphyr can be an alternative to existing tools, getting to faster diagnoses, but also reducing costs. Similar accreditation processes are underway for genetic diseases and leukemias in other parts of Europe as well. Here in the United States, labs such as Praxis have launched a menu of laboratory-developed tests and obtained reimbursement codes for them. Augusta University is also developing a novel laboratory-developed test for cancer based on their results in heme malignancies and solid tumors, which have been presented at the Cancer Genomics Consortium meeting. And so for us, 2020 was really a spectacular year. And now that we've had a chance to cover many of the advancements, I want to turn the focus to 2021 and talk a little bit Erik, about what we see ahead. 2021 is truly shaping up to be another transformational year for the company. Thanks to your support, our shareholders, we've taken major steps to secure the financial future of the company by raising a substantial amount of capital, which sets the stage for execution of our plan without the overhang of capital limitations. 2021 is going to be critical to the long-term growth. We are squarely focused on driving the global development of sapphire-based assays for use in clinical testing of patients with genetic diseases and hematologic malignancies, and on the adoption of sapphire for use in larger clinical studies that will allow us to obtain a critical mass of data on sapphire application across a number of key areas, including prenatal and postnatal genetics, hematologic malignancies, including leukemias and lymphomas, and then solid tumors. These data are expected to expand the number of publications, including peer-reviewed ones, and support an increase in the number of laboratory-developed tests on the market, with the goal of reimbursement of sapphire-based laboratory-developed tests by third-party payers in the U.S. and around the world. Now, a big part of our ability to drive adoption of sapphire stems from the successful acquisition we made of Lineagen in 2020.
It's almost like we were
which
talking
added
about that.
important products and skills, including the content, domain expertise required to build a reimbursed diagnostic menu on Sapphire. By combining these products and the services business, we believe that we can accelerate the broader adoption of Sapphire as a technology for clinical assay development throughout cytogenetics. Overall, 2020 was a great year and against a challenging backdrop, and we are continuing to gain traction in many important ways, and we are seeing evidence that this strategy is working. With 2020 showing us that Sapphire is ready to serve a significant need in a substantially large and growing market, we see that our customers are ready to adopt the new technology. And I believe our goal of establishing Bionano as the next great genomics company is greater than ever.
True.
And with that, I would like to turn the call over to Chris for an overview of financials. Chris?
Go, Chris.
Let's
Thanks,
go,
Erik.
Chris.
Let me start with a review of our financial results for the fourth quarter and year ended December 31st, 2020. Revenue in Q4 was approximately $4 million, consistent with the preliminary results that we issued back on January 7th. This represents an increase of 43% compared to $2.8 million in the same period of 2019. The increase was primarily driven by a $1.1 million increase in service revenue, largely from our Lineagen subsidiary acquired in August of 2020
Just 1.1.
Revenue for the year came in at $8.5 million, down $1.6 million or 16% from 2019, largely due to restrictions on our customers' lab operations related to COVID-19. While activity is picking up, we do believe that COVID-19 restrictions will continue to affect revenue across our business.
Instant 5-cent
Our
jump.
gross margin came in at 30%, down 9% from the same period last year, due mainly to lower instrument selling prices and some year-end accounting entries related to inventory value cleanup. As Erik mentioned at the beginning of the call, we ended the year with an installed base of 97 Saphyr systems, an increase of 24 from the year-end 2019. Our reagent rental and our services programs are doing well, reflecting an increasing interest in Saphyr and the incredibly novel and meaningful data that the system can produce. We are actively trying to make it easier for potential customers to obtain and use Saphyr data, which we believe will lead to instrument and consumables revenue down the road.
Yes.
Operating expense for the fourth quarter of 2020 was $12.3 million, an increase of approximately $3.4 million compared to $8.9 million in the same period of 2019. The increase is primarily due to an increase in salary expense. During 2020, headcount increased by 49, including 33 that joined us as a result of the Lineagen acquisition.
I'll join you guys.
Operating expenses for the year ended December 31st was $41.3 million, an increase of approximately $11.4 million from the $29.9 million in the same period of 2019. The increase was comprised of about $4.5 million of salary expense, $3.4 million of legal and other outside services related to the Lineagen acquisition and other corporate activities, $2.6 million of Lineagen expenses, and just under $1 million of various other net changes.
Is that 4.6 for Lineagen?
Our cash balance as of December 31st was $38.4 million. So clearly, 2021 is off to a great start. Since the beginning of the year, we raised about $335 million through 2 underwritten public offerings, sales on our ATM facility, and the exercise of outstanding warrants for our common stock, driven by the increase in our share price. Our strong balance sheet allows us to shift our focus to achieving our long-term vision of disrupting genomics and thereby contributing to advances in healthcare through the global adoption of Saphyr. Our main objectives for 2021 revolve around clearing additional barriers to widespread adoption through the execution of our clinical studies, continuing to build on the number of published studies showcasing the power of Saphyr and Saphyr data, supporting the development of LDTs, and building on the market momentum that we started to see through the course of 2020. With that, I'll turn the call back over to Erik to discuss some of our upcoming milestones. Then we'll open the call up for Q&A. Erik?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for that summary. And
I just want to say, Chris is a
what
fucking
I think
king.
is clear here is that 2020 has really set an incredible foundation for us. And our fundraising here in 2021 has cleared the path for us to really focus on execution going forward. You know, what we've put together here is a summary of important milestones and what we see as the timing for each of them. And the key takeaway from these milestones is that while we are focused on the
2021's in a rock.
Oh my God.
And utilization of Saphyr and optical genome mapping very broadly,
I think they're lowballing.
We want to make sure that we really emphasize the importance of clearing the path to truly significant adoption overall. And so a lot of these milestones are based on that aspect. And so beginning with the second quarter, we expect to see important accreditations for the capabilities of Saphyr in certain European markets. These accreditations lower barriers for other labs in other markets to adopt more broadly. We'll be expanding the commercial release of assays and capabilities on Saphyr, including prenatal assays for the first time in the first quarter, as well as expanding additional pediatric assays around different sample types that can be adequately handled for optical genome mapping. And then what we'll begin to see in the fourth quarter is a number of the key programs that are underway in clinical studies starting to show results. So we are expecting to see the interim publication of results from our pediatric clinical studies. We expect to see validation of additional laboratory developed tests and other reimbursement codes emerging from these clinical study sites. We're going to have a prototype of a next generation high throughput Sapphire, which will expand capabilities of optical genome mapping even broader than what they are today. And importantly, we expect the installed base of Sapphire systems to grow by as much as 50% on a year-over-year basis.
It's going to be more than that. That's a low ball number.
I think as a key step in
887 now.
The amount of utilization of Sapphire taking place in the market. And so when we look at this progress, we see it as being very important. And we see it also in the context of a much larger vision. And that vision is really about what is the future of genome analysis. And to understand that vision, we look to the past, and what we see is that the first 20 years in this century have focused on genome analysis that's based first on microarrays and then on next generation sequencing. And the impact that these technologies have had on healthcare broadly defined has been simply incredible. And for investors, the value creation has been remarkable as well. But it's clear that innovation in these technologies is leveling off. And so when we look to the future, what we see is that the era of big biology and genomics is going to be driven by new technology.
Yeah, BioNano is the future.
Genome mapping and the Sapphire system at the center of the next big wave, which is going to be focused on genome structure analysis. And so we think that we are really at the beginning of this incredible journey. We're pleased with the progress that we have, but we're very focused on what the future brings, and we couldn't be more excited about where we're positioned. And so with that, operator, I'd like to turn it over to you for Q&A.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. If you are using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Again, press star 1 to ask a question. Our first question comes from Kevin DeGeeter of Oppenheimer. Please state your question.
Oppenheimer.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my questions. Just a couple for me today. First, with regard to the next gen optical imaging platform and the target to have a prototype by 4Q, can you just walk us through a little bit in terms of the target product profile there, and incrementally, what are the primary operational challenges to meet that 4Q timeline?
Sure. So, what we're focused on is building a platform that can serve the substantially higher throughput operating labs compared to your traditional community cytogenetics lab. The community cytogenetics labs represent the vast majority, but these higher volume labs take a significant amount of the volume. And so we are anticipating by the time the system is launched and up to full speed that it will represent a increase of approximately 14-fold over the current throughput of the Sapphire system, which is roughly 5,000 human genomes per year. And so that's a pretty substantial overall increase in throughput. When you talk about the milestones and work that needs to be done, it's relatively straightforward in that we've built these instruments before and the principles of operation are not changing, but we are adapting a completely novel optical imaging platform, which is, of course, off the shelf, available today, and we need to implement it in the configuration that's useful for optical genome mapping. But there's really no substantial invention involved, and so we believe that the program overall is relatively low risk.
Fucking perfect answer.
And I get a fair number of questions from investors with regard to the addressable market for Saphyr, pediatric and prenatal markets. Can you just comment on how you see the addressable opportunity in those two segments?
Sure. I mean, we typically look at it from the perspective of the number of labs that are out there. And if those labs were to adopt Saphyr and convert their menus over, what would that look like? So in cytogenetics, broadly speaking, there's roughly 2,500 labs worldwide. Probably somewhere between 2 million samples per year being processed for this type of molecular pathology, and overall that represents somewhere in the neighborhood of a $3 to $3.5 billion market for us. That includes some of the research market as well. But something that I would really emphasize for these investors who are asking questions is that that's the market that is right in front of us today. And with the technology accelerating capabilities as quickly as it is, being used in research to discover new applications, the total market opportunity for optical genome mapping goes well beyond that, low single-digit billion number, and is substantially larger. It's harder for us to quantify it specifically because some of the applications haven't even been developed.
Yeah.
Others are.
Because we ain't got a fucking time machine, baby.
When optical genome mapping is used more broadly in prenatal testing and throughout pediatric testing. Think about more broadly a situation where genome analysis is conducted on, every newborn. So not just the idea of doing sequencing and looking at SNPs, but starting to look at genome mapping and structural variation as well. So the potential, we believe, is really very significant. But some of these proximal markets, add up to being in that range.
Very helpful. And then lastly for me, with regard to the fourth quarter, what was the consumable revenue? And can you just comment on the relative split between cytogenetics and other applications?
So consumable revenue was, let's see, I got it right in front of me here, about $4 million. No, excuse me. Sorry. Give me 1 second here. I had multiple things going on. Consumable revenue was about $1.3 million in Q4.
And qualitatively, how do we think about the split between cytogenetics and other end markets?
Yeah, outside the United States, I was just say outside the United States, it's 75, 25, 80, 20. And I would say it's not quite 100% human, but it's almost entirely human. And then within that, it's 75, 25. A lot of the non-human is still focused on drug development. So, we really shifted from a basic research tool that's used throughout genome analysis to one that's primarily used in human applications. And outside the U.S., 75, 25, cyto versus research. In the U.S., it's more balanced. We see increasing, cyto types of applications, but it's closer to maybe 60% research, 40% cyto.
Super helpful. I'll get back in the queue. Congratulations on all the progress.
Thank you, Kevin.
The next question comes from Jason McCarthy of Maxim Group. Please state your question.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the questions. As opposed to kind of thinking about the revenue last year or even this year, can you talk a little bit more broadly about not the shortcomings, but I'll just call them shortcomings of NGS, whether it's long reads or short reads, and where that missing component to genomic interrogation really matters. And maybe in the context of, 50% of cancers don't get the proper diagnosis and genomic diseases are even worse. And how Saphyr completes that puzzle, if you would. And that's the story I think investors need to hear over this year.
Holy shit, the Maxim dude is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that sort of opportunity, Jason, because I think that's really where the focus should be.
What a great question.
We have, labored hard to develop the product and make it relevant in some really, really important end markets. And what we're seeing now is that those markets are adopting. And so, sure, it's important that we're selling the product and that people are paying for it. That sort of validates that it's a viable commercial product. But our focus is on really clearing the path to seeing this much, much wider adoption to fill these critical gaps. And on a regular basis, publications are appearing showing that sequencing, as powerful as it is for detecting small variants, really underperforms when it comes to detection of large structural variations. And if you just read through,
that's a fact.
You're the kind of guy who would read medical guidelines. Not everybody would, but if you look at the medical guidelines for testing in genomic diseases, hematologic malignancies, solid tumors, they all recommend as the first line of analysis some form of structural variation detection, whether that's microarrays, fluorescence in situ hybridization. And as much as there is an interest in having sequencing address those markers, the publications show that sequencing cannot. And furthermore, to really get next generation sequencing in particular to work well in the clinic, it still requires extraordinary depth of coverage, which means that to make it work reliably, consistently, at high throughput and at low cost, it's not possible to do a whole genome analysis. That's with next generation sequencing. I'm not even talking about long read sequencing.
Right.
And so it really leaves an opportunity for optical genome mapping to come in and be the go-to solution to look at structural variation.
That's right. The go-to.
Base pairs and bigger. So where would that matter? Well, that's what all the medical guidelines are calling for. So it would clearly matter there. But let's talk about drug development in cancer, where fusion genes, for example, are incredibly important. And of course, there are many known ones out there that are the target of different therapeutic development programs. But for every fusion protein that's known, we believe that there are many, many that have yet to be discovered because a tool like the Saphyr system is not being used broadly yet. And so think about an environment where essentially every genome that's being analyzed is run through maybe sequencing, fine, to look for small variants, but also through optical genome mapping to look for large genomic variation, because it's definitely complementary to single nucleotide variants and maybe the more impactful story. And optical genome mapping on the Saphyr system is the only one that's capable of doing that at a throughput that matters, a cost that matters, and at a turnaround time that matters. And so that's really where this technology is positioned. And so the opportunity is really significant. And I've said this in my prepared remarks, but I think it's really important, which is that we're at the very beginning of the story. We're just writing the introduction right now.
Right, and then also just one more broad thought that maybe you can help out with is microarrays kind of got rolled up with next-gen sequencing, right? Next-gen took them out. Western blots got rolled up in digitized proteomics, and then the natural progression for cytogenetics is not if, it's when. It's going to move on to something else, and it should be something like structural variation. Can you kind of give your view of that view, if you would?
Yeah, I mean, so, thank you for pointing out two examples in history where a technology has consolidated other platforms into a single streamlined workflow. So NGS did it not only to microarrays, but completely revolutionized Sanger sequencing. And so next generation sequencing is an amazing example of that. Western blot is another amazing example of that. And that was done by companies in industry. So Illumina, we know, and others around next generation sequencing, Ventana around the cell surface marker analysis. And so it's really, I think, a very clear and obvious path for optical genome mapping to streamline and industrialize the cytogenetics workflow. And something that's very interesting about this cytogenetics space is that laboratory directors there and people who work in cytogenetics see the technology revolution that optical genome mapping provides as something that they've been waiting for, in many cases, their whole career. So, as you know, Dr. Alka Chabe joined us as our first chief medical officer last August.
Alka! And
she sees the Sapphire system as that thing she's been looking for her entire career as a cytogeneticist and cytogenomics professional. And she's not alone in that view. And so we really see Sapphire industrializing this workflow and becoming something that's used incredibly broadly. And for that reason, we actually call the sort of euphoria that Sapphire brings Cytopia, because it's like utopia for cytogeneticists. And it not only improves patient outcomes, but it positions cytogenetics at the center.
We're the cytomaniacs.
Drug development
I love it.
and other areas of important discovery research where isn't used today because it's so laborious and time consuming. So we're about to see truly a revolution in genome analysis around structural variation detection that Sapphire brings.
And its adoption is going to be parabolic.
Not if, when. Yes. Thanks, Erik.
You're welcome.
Our next question is Jeffrey Cohen of Ladenburg Thalmann. Please state your question.
Oh, hi, Erik, Chris, and Alka. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Hi, Jeff.
Very fine. So just a few questions. One follow-up to Kevin's questions earlier. It's sounding like you're going to have 2 SKUs as far as a platform, one more for high-throughput facilities and the current one to continue with kind of the R&D side of things. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes, and which is to say that we'll offer both platforms, and that will enable us to serve the market as broadly as possible. But we don't see the current platform going away.
Got it. Okay, and then secondly, could you talk about revenues and placements by geography, at least kind of in a macro standpoint for 2020, and maybe give us some sense of how that may look for 2021?
If he says China, I'm going to shit my pants right now.
Yeah, so we're seeing strength in Europe. They're moving forward faster with getting systems validated and into their workflow. U.S. is lagging a little bit behind, though.
Surprise.
We've been stronger in the research market in the U.S. than we have been traditionally, but we're starting to see an uptake in clinical revenue. And then China's been pretty quiet, obviously, this last year for a lot of reasons.
China.
But we see that picking up, but lagging still behind Europe and America. So we expect to see the most growth in Europe next year, followed by North America and then the Far East.
Got it. Okay. And then lastly for me, it
kind of reeled me in there a little bit.
Talk a little more about some of the developments that are going on or expect to be going on as far as psychiatric disorders and other neurological conditions. That would be super helpful.
Sure. So, through our lineage in business, we are providing services to physicians who are managing patients with a variety of neurodevelopmental disorders, including autism spectrum disorder and other disorders that span that space. And our focus is to continue to serve them with the existing standard of care tools, but over the course of this year, we'll begin developing those applications on the Sapphire system and making them available through our own CLIA lab, working with payers, to cover those assays. And so, that's one area where we'll be focused on neurodevelopmental disorders. Our customers in the research side of the market have been applying optical genome mapping to other neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's and ALS. And, their results are simply spectacular, and we expect those programs to continue. And it's expanded beyond the diseases that I mentioned, like ALS and Alzheimer's, which affect primarily, older adults, to include now applications and discovery research in pediatric populations. And so what we expect to see as a result of this research is that there can be novel content discovered that could be the basis of future laboratory developed tests. And so we'll just have to see how that research plays out. But it's an incredibly interesting area. And it's an area that where structural variation is already known to play a significant role. And so the Sapphire system almost certainly is going to amplify that.
Without a doubt.
Lastly, for me, it feels like you broke through kind of the 1% TAM area on the research side of things. It feels like perhaps 2021 may be the year that you break through that 1% TAM on the commercial side. Is that a good way of depicting the size of the platform out there and the capabilities
for
the coming year?
Yes. I mean, the numbers that you're citing, I would need to get out my slide rule and verify those calculations. But, breaking through barriers is clearly what has been happening for us. And it's really been around awareness and understanding and appreciation. And what anybody, I think, in the company would relay to you is that the amount of inbound interest in our target end markets is higher than it's ever been, and it'll be higher tomorrow than it was today. But we have certain structural, barriers. You have to call them barriers. You have to call it what it is. We have certain structural barriers that we need to address, and the reimbursement one is a big one here in the U.S. And we have great programs that are designed to address that. And the most fundamental and foundational aspect of addressing that is building an incredible war chest of data that supports the utility of optical genome mapping in these settings and really validates it. And that's the basis of of these clinical trials, which our CMO has designed, and we're in the process of getting underway, and you'll see them progress significantly over the course of 2021 and 2022. And it's that foundation of data. Like when we start climbing on top of that, that's when we're going to keep bursting through, the next.
I'm on top. I'm bursting through.
And so
I'm bursting.
Yes, we've broken through in many respects, and that's given us the opportunity to do more work. And those commercial breakthroughs will be, we'll see them over the course of this year. But it's really after we get some key work done this year that those commercial breakthroughs will really start to take off.
Hey, baby.
Okay. Got it. Thanks for taking the questions and congrats on the readout.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next question is from Scott Henry of Roth Capital. Please state your question.
Thank you. Good afternoon and congratulations on quite a year so far.
That's right.
A couple questions. And first, I don't know if you gave this, but did you mention how many Sapphire placements, whether it be a lease, a sale, were made during the quarter?
There was approximately 12. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
All right. And just checking my numbers. So there were 96 installed I had at the end of Q3. So a lot of those, I would assume they're out there ready to install in Q1. Is that the correct way to think about it? Or whenever it may be in the future?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And then when we look out to 2021, how should we think about the quarters? I don't know how much COVID is going to impact the first half of the year. Just trying to get a sense on Q1. Obviously, there's only 8 days left in the quarter, but just trying to get a sense of how that trajectory may look throughout the year.
Yeah, so typically Q1 is a little. Typically, Q1's a little seasonally soft for us, as the labs spend their budgets in Q4 and then are working on saving money in Q1. But it won't be dramatic, and then we expect to see modest growth through the year, quarter on quarter. For the full year, we expect to see substantial double-digit growth, but it's we don't think it's going to be triple-digit growth, but we'll see year-on-year growth by the end of the year in the substantial double digits.
Okay, great. And I haven't seen the 10K yet. Could you give me a sense of where the real-time shares outstanding are, given a lot of levers in there?
Yeah, exactly. So we ended the year with 189 million shares outstanding, and right now we've got about 280 million shares outstanding with all the work we've done this year.
Okay, that's helpful. And then I guess just a kind of a big picture question for Erik. Obviously, it's a different company today than it was even 4 months ago, both in terms of market cap, in terms of cash balance. So given that change and those dynamics, how do you think about, managing the company today versus then? I mean, will there be any changes to the business model, perhaps, growing faster, being able to invest more in SG&A and R&D? Just trying to think of how you view it today versus 4 months.
Stupid ass question.
You don't view it differently at all, but my guess is you probably do.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think
it's not.
No, it's not.
It's a lie to him.
You're asking, it's probably a question on a lot of people's minds, and we have, we've sort of allowed that question to hang around for a while and haven't gone for an immediate answer, but we're very definitive. The company is positioned in, an absolutely, exciting, substantial market, genomics, with a very differentiated technology that serves an unmet need, which by the measurements that we can make on that unmet need is really substantial. Like the end user markets, are in the billions. but we're pretty sure that the total opportunity is bigger than anybody expects today, and that only time and more discoveries is going to open that up. And so we don't think that it makes sense to change the business model at all. What makes the most sense is to take advantage of the resources that investors have made available to us and put that money to work behind the incredible story of optical genome mapping and Sapphire system in helping patients, in making new discoveries that are going to transform different diseases, and really advancing the overall healthcare objectives of genomics broadly defined in this new era of big biology driven by structural variation analysis. And so, the capital is there to help us really double down on this plan. It's not there to help us change the plan. It doesn't mean that we don't see the need for, tuck-ins and different technologies that are out there, in the space that would accelerate our plan. But the capital is there for us to double down on the original vision and make that happen sooner than we might have been able to make it happen without the capital.
Okay, great. Thank you for the color on that. Congratulations again, and thanks for taking the questions.
Thanks, Kevin.
There was a minute where I thought we all disconnected because we were all listening to it so hard.
Yeah, seriously.
So strange, yeah.
Our next question
So hard.
is from Kevin DeGeer of
Another
Optical.
question.
Please state your question.
Hey, just to follow up on Scott's point, just to clarify for financial modeling, how are you thinking about the split between reagent rental and capital purchase on that kind of call it 53 or more units you hope to place this year?
Yeah, so right now we see it as roughly 50-50. And then it gets a little bit interesting because we're starting to see some early reagent rentals that are now converting to sales.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Of course they would.
Is a little bit, 50% plus reagent rentals. And then a lot of those will transition to sales over the course of 6 months to a year.
That's only natural.
Got it. And recognizing you don't provide guidance as such on operating expenses, I think we all expect OpEx expenses to accelerate pretty meaningfully this year. Any parameters you would provide as to how to think about either over the course of the next 12 months or longer term, the trajectory of spend? Thanks.
Yeah, so the biggest things we're investing in this year are first headcount. We're adding headcount across the sales marketing organization and in R&D, and we're also spending on these clinical trials. That's where, as you heard from Erik, where our focus is on getting those clinical trials going as fast as we can get them going. So OpEx is going to be up this year. I don't think it's going to be staggering. I'd say somewhere in the 20 to 40% range this year. And then I would probably keep it in that range for the next couple of years. Growth. That rate.
That's all for me. Great. Thank you.
So we beat expectations. It's roughly -4 cents.
We have reached
it's be -5.
question and answer session.
Our analysts thought it'd be -5.
And I will now turn the call over to Erik for closing remarks.
Yeah, great. Thank you, operator, and thank you to everybody who attended the call today. And we look forward to seeing you soon for our first quarter 2021 call. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy.
Concludes today's conference. You may disconnect your lines at this time. Thank you for your participation and have a great day.
So what do you guys think of the call? We beat earnings. So there's a lot to cover.
Yes. I couldn't be more hyped about what Erik brought to us today. We beat earnings. I felt like he gave an amazing kind of just summation of what 2020 was. And and painted just an amazing picture of what 2021 can be.
I thought he did such a cool job of giving us a little overview of the cytogenomics landscape over time.
Yeah.
You know, that was really nice. You don't see that very often where somebody can kind of condense like a history and do it well and be like, this is what it is, this is where it's going, and kind of give us that light. Like when Vitron talks to us about futures and how to look at futures and how to look forward, like Erik did that for us today, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he painted a good broad picture of what's happened and what's going to happen. It's pretty exciting. Yeah. So I think the analysts had just recently upgraded from -7 cents earnings per share to 5, and we did -4. So that's good.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
And we saw the price in after hours spiked like about 10 minutes after they released the numbers, and then just kind of settled out around sitting around 8.75 right now, which was what it was at pretty much during the whole call.
Yeah, there was definitely some quick reaction in after hours there as soon as that shit dropped.
Yeah.
Well, you bought in you added to your position at what, 850?
It was 846.
Oh shit! Nice.
Nice.
I think
you did that today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, okay. So like, I didn't. I got margin called today, so I had to sell out of some of my bingo position, but then I rebought at the dip today towards right before close.
I got you. Cool. What did you think, Henry? Was there anything that jumped out at you that was like, oh, that's cool?
The only thing that jumped out at me was that dumb guy that was asking that stupid question. I was like,
I was reading something, so I was kind of zoned out. But what was it? What did he ask?
He was saying something like, "Well, what do you think? You know, you guys, how you guys looking now versus how you look like, you know, last month,
like a year
back
ago.
4 months ago." I'm like, really? I mean,
yeah.
The whole world's listening to your question. What is that?
Yeah.
He's like challenging. Do you need to reinvent the entire business model?
Right.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, do you need to change anything from what you guys were doing a few months ago to now?
No,
man. Things are going fantastic. Thank you.
That is a stupid question.
It was
also
stupid
from a professional analyst.
But we got to find out who the dude. What was it, Maxim?
Maxim Group, dude.
Oh, yeah, let's find out who that guy was.
Great.
Oh, the Maxim guy, yeah.
Let's get him on
He had
Twitter,
good
because now
questions.
now that our Twitter feelies are starting to touch with the pros and that people are responding to us, let's talk to that guy.
Yeah,
His questions were direct, and they were framed in a way that Erik could have answered either way, or C-Stu could have answered either way. Shout out to Chris Stewart. I'll put him right here on my hand like I like to do.
Chris Stewart, he's amazing.
But he's cool on Twitter too. He's funny on Twitter too. But it was really cool the way that dude from Maxim posed the questions. The answers to them from Erik were really cool. Like, they were framed in a way that the answers could be direct, and they kind of brought the right kind of answers out. And I really liked it. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. The first one though, Oppenheimer, man, burst my eardrums. I'm like, oh my god, man.
You'd think
anybody remember what the question was, or I was just.
I had to pull my headset off back a bit because it was
my
so
first
blurry.
thought was like, I need to send a resume into BioNano and be like, yo, I'm a sound guy, and
that is a third party.
From now on, whenever there's meetings, like let me do your tech for you, and I'll set it up, and it'll be so slick, and I'll have the compressors running just right, and I'll put a high pass, low pass filter on it, and I'll cut out some of the nasty phone noise, and
so juicy.
Just juicy, yeah.
Well, they were also saying that they were adding staff. You know, I think they said they were at 39, then they added Lineagen and added more.
So that was a large
more
expense.
staff.
Was just the salaries going up was one of the major expenses over.
That was the big increase in expenses. They're saying that.
I mean, you got to pay people to work, so you know.
Okay, let's talk about this now. Let's talk about this. A prototype in the fourth quarter. Like what?
Yes.
What?
Okay.
Prototype what?
So, yes.
Prototype.
All right. So now,
is it like a higher throughput?
It was a higher throughput.
Higher throughput.
Okay.
So like,
it's the nano nozzle.
We know that like the technology is limited to a certain extent. We're never going to be able to see smaller than 500 base pairs, right? There's a hard wall there. We're not going to be able to cross. So I'm thinking, like, what are they going to do? Like, how the nano nozzle? That's still a ways off. If they hit us with the nano nozzle this year, I would be fucking stunned.
Well,
what you do is you make a machine that can kick out 10 times more numbers. You know, in the same amount of time.
Maybe a machine that takes like 10 cartridges at once rather than 2.
Exactly.
So it has a higher
So now instead of
throughput that
I mean, think about
a
like
mega sapphire.
It's a mega sapphire.
Well,
the
right,
Megfire.
The Megfire.
The Megfire.
What you do is you plug it in and it takes you right to Cytopia. But the
you plug there in the
no.
So now I need 2 T-shirts from you, BioNano. I need a Back to the Map shirt and a Cytopia shirt.
Well, the way I was thinking about Cytopia, you know, he explained it like Euphoria, but I was thinking more like we can have a utopian society, a dystopian society, and a Cytopian society. Yeah.
Instead of Society of Cyclopses.
Yep. So when he was talking about the patent and when he was talking about the higher throughput, he did it in an interesting context. And so the thing that stuck out to me, if I was going to make like some kind of conjecture about it, is he threw shade at NGS, right? So he was like, they're never going to have it. It's never going to be fast enough. They wanted to do it, but if they want to do it, it has to be faster. They have to be able to do more. And then in the next breath, he was like, look, we want to be able to get it everywhere and have every child get a genome map out the gate. That's the way it should be. And then he was like, and also now we have this high throughput thing that Sapphire that we're working on. And so it seems to me that in kind of pushing that they are so then the next breath he said, and he was talking to the dude from Maxim, I think, and I think they must be homies of some kind, because the way he was like, I know you're the kind of guy that would read the medical book, the handbook, but not everybody does that. You know, there was a lot of this in this call. But he was basically like, look, all the medical handbooks recommend structural variation testing first and foremost out the gate. And that goes back to what we've been talking about over and over about screening versus diagnostics, when we should use what and what the cost variability is and what the cost-benefit analysis is going to be. If we had a utility chart, we'd see multiple axes of gradability in terms of utility, and then we'd see a gradation that goes in kind of a rainbow formation where the two ends the point is getting it set up in a way to where people understand that if they want to follow the way that the handbook says it's supposed to go, which is to do hard structural variations first as more of a screening than a diagnostic, and Sapphire can do it cheaper and better with a higher throughput and now an even higher throughput, then it's going to have to just get dispersed everywhere. And he put some like heavy leans on our healthcare system. They had right up front the NHS from UK, SLAM. They talked about Canada right up front, boom. So basically, this is my long way of saying the high throughput Sapphire is going to, in my opinion, be able to do a lot more than 96 reads a week for cheaper over time. That would be the move.
So there are right now where Sapphire is being installed is in research facilities, right? But like I think a lot to like the genetic testing that my wife had done when she was pregnant. That gets sent out to like some big commercial lab, right? That's not some little tiny research lab that's developing LDTs. That's got to be some big ass laboratory that has huge throughput, right?
Right. Yeah,
because dude, I'm telling you, there had to have been 30, 40 pregnant in this doctor's office every single time we went in there.
That's a lot of estrogen right there.
You know what I mean? That's a lot of fucking baby juice they got to be processing, you know?
Baby juice.
I don't know how it's dude, it could be fucking anything. I don't know. But what I'm saying is to crack into that market, and I think this is what Erik was alluding to. That is what this next Sapphire Plus or the Mega Fire is gonna get them into, right? It's gonna get them into that. that market. Because right now, small laboratories that are doing, small clinical assays, developing LDTs, the 96 genomes a week, that's fine, right? But like if I'm trying to do that in a day, right, we need higher throughput.
I'm visualizing a machine. Sorry, I didn't know you're. Go ahead, Justin.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I can see a machine that, because you see how it's installed now, the two chips they're laid in, and then there's the arm that comes over and locks them in place. I'm wondering now if there's like consecutive like arms where there's like two per or one per. So once it's done, you can change it out and put another sample in. So the work is still continuing in all these other samples.
I see.
But you can plug and play these other sample chips.
This is just
while it's
vision.
working. Yeah,
No, I love
that's
this.
That's how I can see it producing more throughput.
Right. No, I love the Jeff vision. That's awesome.
No, this is real. This is super real. Like I don't think people haven't seen. I want to put up a picture of the that hot rod, that truck that you built, because I don't think people understand the engineering brain that.
Yeah,
that
I
you
do have an engineering kind of brain. I think I see how things are made, and when someone says there's going to be a better version, I think of like, how could you make that better?
How could that be it?
How can you expand on it?
And
right?
the only way you can do that is to have multiple, arms or multiple chips, which can be put in and out while the others are still being read, or being images are still being taken in the other samples. I don't know. That's just what's popped into my head. I don't see how they would ever.
Sick. If it's anything close to that, oh man.
Yeah. I don't see how, like, hardware is the only way they can make it faster. The software, I think, is caught up to the hardware at this point. So I think they need to add more hardware, more optical lenses in there, and more armatures and stuff that are capable of taking more chips at once.
To expand on your vision, instead of making them, side by side in a long row, maybe they can stack them like, 4 across the top, and then underneath another 4, kind of like a Rolodex style,
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
The optical sensor though has to be directly in line with wherever it's being read. So
exactly. So the optical sensor could be scaffolded. I mean, I'm no engineer,
you gotta move the chips. You gotta move the chips to the sensor.
Exactly.
Okay,
move
so
the
if it
chips
was
to the
under
sensor, like a Rolodex style. Like exactly,
like a
rotisserie.
Sapphire rotisserie. What I'd like to do, what I'll do for my segment in the real cast when we cast this weekend, I'm going to do something about options, but also I'll look at the trajectory of growth in terms of size of microchips over time and try and come up with what the size of Sapphire can get boiled down to in terms of hardware and throughput based on the kinds of lens similarity in size. So like some of the new lenses are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and getting the same kind of resolution. So depending on how that works over time, a higher throughput could just mean multiple of what we think of as Sapphire now in one thing that's smaller versions that run multiple samples. So that would be kind of those two ideas put together or something like that.
No, I'm excited to see, and they must be working on it. Must have been working on it for quite a while. If they have a prototype they want to have ready in the fourth quarter, then
that's so sick.
There's so much work to go into those things.
9 months,
and we're already in early, so we're good. Like Erik keeps saying, this is the beginning of the story. We're in the very beginning of things. So things are going to be a little rough, a little choppy. We're going to have some red days. We're going to have red weeks. We're going to have red months. But
that's the thing.
But we just have to be patient and hold.
I think quarter one I think it's going to be in June is going to be tremendous. I mean, that's all the time frame when they start blowing up, and I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we start seeing that January, February revenue coming in, get reported, then we'll start seeing that.
If there were ever,
I know that they said that they want to see double-digit growth in 2021. He said modest double-digit growth over this next year. That's fucking huge.
If there were ever a time that they were going to be approached for a buyout, then it would be right now. Because they just painted a beautiful picture of what we're going to see in 2021, and we're already seeing the benefits of what they've been doing since the acquisition of Lineagen all the way to now, and it's pretty exciting. But we'll see what happens.
Which, P.S., the lineagen shit, they just hit everybody with that.
Yeah, it was
Everybody's
so
like,
sick.
wait, what? A quarter of your revenue is from what?
Didn't we say that?
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't
We've
we
been
say
telling
that?
y'all.
I wonder if they're not.
They don't want to hear us, man. They don't want to hear us. I'm telling you.
And everyone's still going on and on. I'm looking at StockTwits, and the people are still like talking about FDA approval, but they just haven't done the research yet.
They don't get it.
They don't need it. We've been using cytogenic equipment since the 70s with LDTs, and that's all.
Right. FDA is for drugs. It's tremendous process for drugs,
to a degree,
but not for a cytogenic tool.
Well, let's take that. Let's take the segment that we did. I think it was episode 2. I think, if I remember. And let's make that into a small little clip and pick out like why, and let's shoot that over to Mom or somebody, and because somebody's got some StockTwits. Juice.
I'll do that this week.
I think it was
Cisco.
episode 3.
Cisco.
Was it episode
when
3?
Was it 3?
The,
Maybe it was 3.
Yeah.
I think it was 3.
Yeah. I'll chop that out.
Now, you guys noticed that graph that they had up earlier where they were showing, everybody, but when you get to 2020, all you saw was BioNano. It's like 2020. All we have is BioNano. There is nothing left. All the old stuff's behind us. So
well, he's got a good point. I think he's got a really valid point. When it comes to single nucleotide, variant, we found a lot. Like the growth curve is slowing down on sequencing. We've sequenced the human genome in like the early 90s, right? We've learned as much as we can learn with even next generation sequencing, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Where is the knowledge gap? Well, it's in large structural variation because we've never had a tool that can really paint that kind of picture for us before now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, everything's looking sapphire from here on out because that's where all the knowledge is left to learn.
Yeah. Delve in a little bit deeper, so to speak, or you can see a lot more now. You know what kind of reminds me of the adoption process or rate is going to be somewhat similar to like how CDs were adopted. Remember, CDs came out, and it was the technology is going to take a long time to be adopted because not everyone has a CD player and they're expensive, and then eventually that's all. Then you were throwing the little cassettes away. We weren't using cassettes anymore. And now that is how now we don't even have CDs, but that's just how that's how technology advances.
CDs nuts.
And it's like I said during the recording of the earnings call, I said it's the adoption is going to be parabolic because once it starts, that curve just gets steeper and steeper and steeper.
Right.
Because the price comes down, and their business model is perfect for that too because they're doing a subscription based business model now where you can get the CD player, put it in your cabinet, and then it's just up to you to to get the CDs to put in and to use it.
For what it's worth, I don't know if you guys have watched the new Blockbuster documentary on Netflix.
I did.
Yet?
Yeah, it was great.
The last Blockbuster.
Yeah, the last Blockbuster.
Yeah,
so they were. I was thinking about it, Sapphire, the whole time because, or at least
I know. I saw
what I'm talking about?
Correlations to
that
right.
Too when I was so like the way that it went was according to this fucking documentary, all the movie studios were like, no, like we can't have VHS because Blockbusters and like libraries started renting out VHS players because they were so expensive to play. So like they were looking at it as a cost benefit analysis. Yeah, it was so crazy. They were looking at it as an analysis of everybody who borrows a VHS player and then only pays for the VHS, more or less. They lose like 10 tickets over time. But then they realize that the longer you keep the video out because you want to keep watching it, you keep paying that time, and you might as well have paid to go see that movie 10 times from like the benefit of your own house. You watch it one time with 10 people, it turns out to be about the same thing. And so the subscription model over time wins every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, I had a flashback to like a case full of foam with a VCR player in it. I just had a flashback. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
dude.
It was just a little.
Yep.
It was a little baby.
Yeah. I think that when I forget who it was, but when the guy asked him, what do you see Can you paint kind of a future-looking picture for what the market looks like for Sapphire? Eric's like, I can't, because there's no way to know. We have we don't know what this thing's gonna fucking show us in the next year. So there's no way I can tell you how big the market's gonna be. I can tell you it's gonna be a whole lot bigger than it is now, right?
This is where I wanted to submit
cases.
This is where I wanted to submit my second resume to BioNano. So first was for an audio guy during this, and then second, I was thinking. So I have this projection about the future of philosophy generally, and I think that the one thing that's going to happen is philosophers of astrobiology are going to be a thing, like a really big thing, where philosophers come in and say, like, this is what origins of life might have looked like given these kinds of preconditions. So astrobiology tends to be heavy in chemistry and astronomers and these and physicists and biologists, of course. And so what we're going to see is they're going to start hitting walls where they're like, chemically this doesn't make sense, or biologically this wouldn't be the case. And philosophers, we don't give a shit about stuff like that most of the time, which I think is a fault of philosophy, but also can be the thing that moves things forward. And I would love to be a philosopher of cytogenomics, where I just go and be like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then they pay me, and then I go home. I just like do a bunch of whatabouts, and then
just pay me.
Just pay me. What I mean?
Pay you by the what about, like for every what about.
For every what about, $50,000, and then it's enough to. Well,
as big as BioNano's growing, I'm actually thinking to see if I legit might be able to get a job there.
Shit, right?
I'm gonna check and see what
I'll run your
they're
wire.
offering.
Run some cable for you.
He worked with King Erik.
So
I think
that would be epic.
The price is right back at where we started this morning, pretty much. We dropped down to we dropped to 832, and then with the earnings call, we got up.
What did we start the day off?
It was about 880-ish. Let me zoom in on my chart now.
That was 903, wasn't it, or something? Or was that yesterday?
901.
We started with 901 today?
No, 901 was the high today.
Okay, my chart's showing me that 890 was the low at open, but the high of 903. Okay, I see.
Yeah, all right. So we're not too far off from where we started. I mean,
yeah.
Well,
it was a red day right across the board.
Also, if we look at every other
considered.
earnings has just tanked everybody, even when they're good. So, I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, looking pretty good.
Well, GME tanked as well. So
tomorrow morning should be exciting to watch as the news filters through.
Yeah, that'll be the thing.
Tomorrow's going to be a day.
Yeah,
for sure.
Hopefully we. I don't know. What are your? Anyone want to take a stab at the end of the week price guess? We're only a little off from time to time.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. We're a little bullish.
What do you expect?
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, God.
I mean, if we don't recover by 11 by this Friday, I mean, that's.
11. See 11 would be nice.
I can see 11,
happy.
right?
Yeah.
11 would be good. I mean, the news sinks in. And I think they're still got webinars going on, don't they?
Yeah, there's some big catalysts coming. Vitronk was saying, was it the AGTC? I think that's also a ticker.
Yeah, the AGCT, yeah. So they still got that coming.
So that's going to be cool. He was calling that Symposium 2.0 because it's a week long, and they tend to dominate those kinds of things.
That's where they have the Welcome to Cytopia presentation, right?
Yes.
The ACMGM or whatever. I think that's what it's called. There's another one before that, though, on the 11th. There's two upcoming conferences. The ACMG one is the 13th to 16th, I think. But there's one prior to that. I don't remember what it is. Something about some cancer awareness, something.
So, for Jeff and Henry, more likely, so I thought it was interesting that they released earnings a week before the end of quarter one, right? Everybody else seemed a little early. How does quarter two tend to take off on things?
It's going to be hard to say. With every company is kind of different, and what they have, what they have paved out in front of them is, sounds pretty clear. But I don't know how, what the earnings are going to be like for in June. I know the report, but I assume it's going to be higher because they're just starting to get the ball rolling like Erik said, was the beginning of the
I
story.
agree. I think the fact that they're expanding into Europe already, they picked up China. They've already established Canada as well. So,
and if the states just came up with a single pair, then
single pair
insurers. Come on now.
Grab by the
whole thing's so ridiculous. Yeah,
it's it's harder for them to get their foot in the door in the U.S. where their home is because of their insurance system.
Yeah, but I think overall though, every quarter is going to be more tremendous than the previous quarter. So
yeah, and like I said, I think it's going to be parabolic. Like the growth is going to be parabolic once it starts rolling. It's going to pick up some speed and just plow right through.
I mean, the fact that they actually made revenue and exceeded it, that's tremendous in itself. I mean, what other cytogenics company can do that? I mean,
well, they did such a good job. I mean, I know we've talked about it multiple times, but with Lineagen, they just did such a good job. It was such a strong call. It really was. It was a strong call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna say 1350 Friday.
1350 Friday.
Damn. I'm feeling 1007.
What do you think, Henry?
I'm thinking right at 11. Right at 11.
I'm going 11-11.
11-11. Ooh. Man, oh man. I don't know. When I was falling asleep last night, I got itchy palms, so I know money's coming. You know what I mean?
I had itchy eyes. I don't know if that means anything.
Oh yeah, that's right. The whole grass situation.
Yeah, I had the grass cut and my eyes went nuts, and I don't have allergies, so I don't know if it's just
you can develop
develop
allergies as you age. You can just start all of a sudden getting allergic to things. I've seen it happen.
Yeah, but we haven't cut our grass in ages too, so it was due.
Maybe you're allergic to bullshit, and it's just the market.
I'm allergic to red days. Red days give me red eyes.
Red days give me red eyes, man. Clear eyes. Yep. Wow.
People on StockTwit saying, "Oh, we're going to open at 10 tomorrow." Really think so? Yeah. Last chance.
Man, if we open at 10 tomorrow, I'm gonna be real happy if we open at 10 tomorrow.
That would be insane.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd feel that.
Right on.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap this up.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a show. Because how long was the
This
call?
has been.
The call was just under an hour total.
Okay, so it should
between
be shaved down
the intro to Q&A. So so it'll be like 45 minutes. Oh shit, just Sean shout out. This is Sean's first shout out, by the way. He just messaged. So 10 tomorrow. Perfect timing. But
I changed his name. And no one noticed.
No, I noticed. I was the first person that noticed, and
yeah, you were. But
but it was like that for days. I always thought it was just Sean, and then I realized when you changed it that it wasn't that. Like my mind triggered it was insane.
Yeah.
But so the call was like just under an hour. This will be about 30, and so it'll be a little longer of an episode, but it'll really be a short take.
No House of Gains.
No House of Gains. We got no. Well, we can get the Jefford effect in. What you got for us?
You know what? I was gonna do some research on that, but I didn't because I didn't think we were gonna do it. But I'm gonna go with OPGN still. I know I've done it 3 weeks in a row, but they have earnings coming out on the 25th, and their FDA approval is imminent any day. So I'm still holding on to that one. That's my pick that I'm sticking with. OPGN.
If I was going to squeeze something in for the House of Gains, it's this. I was playing with the idea of doing a JP Morgan call, JPM. Their earnings is in April, so roughly about 4 weeks. And I've been waiting for this dip. They started off at an April call at 264. They dropped to 116. Today, I think they hit 0.87. So that's my idea. I haven't gone through with it, but just throwing that out there. Just keep an eye on JPM.
All right, I'll split my paper money between JPM and OPGN this week and keep an eye on it.
Right. Do it. Seriously, do it. Hey, I just noticed you shaved, Justin. You've been dark. You're the first time I can see your face.
That's the reason why he's in the dark room.
Like he's either like that or he's in the dark. Anyway,
love it.
I think that's the show.
I'll do it.
Love it. That's the Full Podcast.
Bye, baby.